Hey, this is Jarvis DeBerry at NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and I'm here with my colleague Tim Morris for another edition of Common Ground. We are here on Facebook Live, and what that means is we're actually here live, and you can put questions for us in the comment section or the comment box beneath this video. Today we're going to be talking about a decision, a case, I should say, that was argued before the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday. A case out of Colorado where a baker, a Masterpiece Bakery, declined to make a wedding cake for a gay couple who wanted such dessert for their reception. They are calling it anti-discrimination. He's calling it a First Amendment case. And so we're doing a slow introduction here so you can come on board and give us your questions that you might have about this case. Tim, I wanted to start with a question for you. You, in your headline of a column that ran in today's paper, yesterday's website, called it a government-mandated same-sex wedding cake. And I'm wondering why you chose that phrasing as opposed to saying this is an anti-discrimination case. Why do you see it as in quite the way that you saw it?
Good question, and so there's some bias there, I think, obviously, in the way that I was trying to frame it. But to me, I mean, it's a very emotional issue, and it's something actually I was a little reluctant to approach because when you're writing, you don't have the chance to interact with people, and so I knew that a lot of people on each side of this were going to be very intense about the things that they said. But to me, it's the question seemed to be that there are rights on both sides, as you mentioned, and one is not being discriminated against, especially as a public accommodation in a business that's open. But another was you have someone who describes himself as a cake artist, but he is going to create something. And the question was, should the state force him to create a cake that he felt violated his beliefs? But, you know, headlines are always limited in some ways. And I did try at the beginning of the column to lay out as best I could both sides. And if you read the things that the couple said, the gay couple come to try to get the cake, you know, I can understand they were totally devastated. They come in, there's a happy, exciting moment for them. Yeah. They came with some binders that they were going to show the baker what they wanted. And he said, you know, I don't do same-sex wedding cakes. Yeah. But on the other hand, he also said, you know, I'll bake anything else for you. I'll bake cookies. I'll bake, you know, anything, birthday cakes. But I can't do this. So I kind of felt like both sides. I wanted to take them both sincerely as where they were, and recognize to me, and this is why I get a little frustrated with people saying, "Oh, this is easy. You're Morris, you're so wrong on this," or "Amen, you're so right," because I think it's a very complicated thing. Yeah. And looking at both sides, I think they're both sincere in how they feel about this. And so then what should happen next? What should the courts do?
Yeah, I find I've been listening to a lot of conversations and debates about this issue, and I listened to another one this morning. What I find really interesting and a little bit disturbing is the baker is trying to really split hairs here. He said that he would have sold them a cake in his case, but he wouldn't make an identical cake. And I don't understand how selling a cake to two men who are getting married is different in any significant way from making a cake from two men, because you already made the cake. I mean, right. If you made a cake on Monday and I come in on Tuesday and I say I want that cake and you'll sell it to me, but you won't make me a cake that I'm going to pick up on Wednesday because that's different. I find that attempt to split a hair very narrow, and again, it raises a lot of questions are raised here, not just between First Amendment and anti-discrimination, but what constitutes art. He is making this a case, or trying to make this a case, about where they're asking me to do art for them. From what I have heard, the facts of the case, they had very little discussion about what this case was going to look like. And there are some people who believe that his case would be stronger if he had said, oh, well, you want me to do a rainbow color, or you want me to do this, but I can't do that. But instead, less than a minute worth of conversation, his objection seems to be, the fact that this is how his cake is going to be used.
If you read the transcript from the Supreme Court hearing yesterday, both sides end up tying themselves in knots over certain things exactly like that.
Yeah.
And so he basically said, I don't do those cakes. He didn't look at their design. He didn't do anything. But they came in expecting, obviously, to get a cake, and like I said, we're very disappointed not to. And so I think he was civil to them, but maybe didn't do a great job of explaining. I'm trying to figure out how this might have all ended, so you didn't end up having to go to the Supreme Court to deal with this.
But do we think it's an important case to come before the Supreme Court, or is this a really frightening idea? Because I worry, and I worry greatly about people who might have a religious objection to whatever. Does the person at the gas station have a right to refuse to sell me gas if I'm using the gas to go do something with which they disagree? Does the person who rents cars say, well, I'm not going to rent my limousine to people who, where's this line between I get to decide, what you're doing with your business?
And Christians, I think, are in a bad situation here. I mean, the reputation that has come upon is the idea that there's so much hatred for the LGBT community. And so we start from that standpoint of people being very suspicious. Mm-hmm. And so people are saying, so the limo driver, could he say he doesn't? So the cake baker has tried to draw, and his lawyers have tried to draw this very narrow thing. And actually, it's the place that I do understand. And that is the wedding cake would be symbolic. And essentially, I think one of the justices said, they always look better than they taste. So it is a design.
Indeed.
Anyone I've ever... It is a design, and it was to celebrate a union that he thinks is wrong. And at the time that this happened, it was not legal yet in Colorado when this first began for two people of the same sex to get married. So you have that a little bit, and actually John Roberts asked, is that even a part of this? But I see this as he's saying you're making me participate in something that I really don't agree with. So to me, it would be harder to say the limousine driver, is just driving the car. But there was questions about the florist, who's also kind of creating something, a photographer who clearly is going to chronicle this, makeup artists, and they all like, some of them actually have the artist name in there, and. One of the things, too, and again, this is why I'm saying I don't think this is so clear-cut. I think one of the justices pointed out that when I buy a birthday cake and I bring it to you, you think I'm the one who's offering the birthday cake. It's not the baker wishing you happy birthday. So how does him just creating that cake?
And what counts as participation? I think that's a very big question. Is the person who baked the cake, a participant in the wedding the same way?
Well, and so my question is, so his conscience, he believes that. And I know people, a friend of mine whose sister was gay and was going to have, after marriage was legal, was going to get married. And he really was tormented over whether he should go because he disagrees with that. And would him showing up, is he supporting her and loving her, or is he saying, I endorse this union, which in his faith he doesn't?
Yeah.
So, I see that part of it as being something that's difficult for people to deal with. On the other hand, the suspicion is that people will use this, saying, well, that's my religious belief, and therefore I'm not. I'm not gonna rent you a house. I'm not gonna sell you a car, and all these things, which would be horrible.
Well, I heard on the radio this morning on NPR, one of the attorneys for the Lambda Legal Association talked about all these cases. A funeral home in Mississippi refused to pick up the body from a nursing home of a man who had a gay partner. There have been lesbian couples turned away from childbirth classes, or not giving the opportunity to participate in those things that we find to be normal in the course of our days and our activities. What do you want to see the Supreme Court say? Can you spell it out?
Well, see, that's the really complex thing, and so Anthony Kennedy, who's going to be the key vote in this,
as always,
but also, he wrote the majority decision in Obergefell, and also the I think it's the Keller case that overturned sodomy laws in Colorado. But he's also very strong on First Amendment and religious rights. And one of the things, I'll get to your question, but one of the things that I thought was to me really encouraging is that he said that this first went to the Civil Rights Commission of Colorado, which determined that the law had been broken. And one of the commissioners had said, I'm so sick of religious people using their supposed faith just to hurt people. So, he's saying, was it already biased? Did the baker actually get a fair shake in Colorado? And so that's what I say that you have to start. I believe you have to start off by respecting both sides. And there's someone who said, well, this whole religious thing, it's a ruse to do something else. And it's been used that way, but I don't think in this case it is, and I don't think it always is. So what I would like to see the court do is to come up with something that recognizes the fact that there are religious beliefs that are going to come out into the public. And I'm just going to say, I don't believe that I can leave my faith at home and that I can leave my faith just on Sundays, that I'm going to try to live that out. And, most of the time I hope that that's good and not controversial, but there will be times in which I feel like, I just can't do that. But the other balance of this is that, in the same way the First Amendment protects that, the 14th Amendment essentially is the idea that once I open up a business, I need to serve everyone equally.
Yeah.
And so I also don't want to violate that. So, one thing that could work out of this is that this baker and other bakers who don't do wedding cakes anymore, and that's not the end of the world, Or if the Supreme Court were to decide there's a narrow, I don't know how you would draw this, but there is this narrow exception for things like a cake that is more symbolic of the wedding itself than a limousine or a hairstyle or makeup, but that cake is symbolic and that there's enough people. That, the two men who were getting married had no trouble finding someone to bake a cake for them. So it's not the end of the world if there are some small number of bakers.
Yeah, but I want to call attention to the fact that they could have gone somewhere else seems to me to not be the point. Because you've had throughout history, places that serve black people even when, others didn't, and not being served at location A does not, being served at location B does not take the sting away from not being served at location A. So, yeah, the fact that they found somebody else relatively quickly is a good thing in the sense that their wedding or their reception went forward. But I think if we're going to have anti-discrimination laws, and if they're going to mean anything, then they have to be equally applied. I can empathize with the baker who is trying to live out his faith, but I do think this is going a step too far. That he is making himself a participant or declaring himself to be a participant in something that he's not really a participant. I don't think if you were to take away this whole case, I don't think that anybody else in the country would say that the person who made the cakes, any less than the person who made the punch, is a participant in the wedding. I think he is calling himself that, but I don't really see it in that way.
Well, and that's why it may be this individual case in which, but what do you do with his conscience?
Yeah.
But I will go back and say that the thing that really hurt me is that if you're trying to be a Christian and you have that problem, how do you deal with the fact that you are somehow taking away or harming that person's dignity? In which Christians believe that we are all equal and therefore everyone deserves, the respective dignity, and you're taking that away. And that's really the hardest part of this for me, which also harkens back to, the way that there were people going around with Bibles in their hands saying, the Bible says white and black people should not mix, should not be married.
Yeah.
And it was wrong and it was hurtful, but people still, I think, hear that when they hear this kind of case.
Yeah.
at the same time, I think there are people out there, sincere people who are just trying to live out their faith, and they're going to more and more going to come into conflict with our culture.
Correct.
And so, what do they do?
Yeah.
Now, like I said, if he doesn't ever make it another birthday, another wedding cake, that's not the end of the world. He's not going to prison. So there's not a large. So I think, to me, if there's a way to say we respect the fact that there are sincere religious beliefs, and we as a people and we as a judicial system need to figure out how to do that, not just discount people saying that religious stuff is foolishness, and once you, I got emails from people saying, I'm a businessman. When I open my doors, my Christianity has nothing to do with it, and I think that's a wrong way for our society to go.
I don't in any way criticize or discount the man's Christian beliefs. I'm a Christian myself, but I think that there's always been this conversation about what is the balance between faith and pluralism in this particular country in particular. We don't have an established national religion, and I can fully understand not being forced to participate in things that are against my religion. And, for example, a big case in the 1940s was whether Jehovah's Witnesses should be forced to say the pledge,
right.
And they were exempted from that for that very reason. This is their deeply held belief, and I think now we're at the point where nobody can be forced,
right.
regardless of what their reason is. So I want to stand on the rock of saying, yes, people have a right to their religious beliefs. And I think they have a reason and a right to live out those beliefs and to live those beliefs openly. But where do those rights end? I think that's the question. At what point can I decide that I'm denying you a service that I give to everybody else because I don't agree with how you're going to use my product? It's not that I don't make this product for everybody.
Right.
I make a wedding cake. I make a wedding cake. Oh, I can't do this for you because of the way that you're going to use this cake.
Well, and there were some interesting questions that came up in the arguments, and one I think was, what about a carpenter or an artist who makes a cross, and the KKK wants to use that in a burning ceremony, and you would object to that. And so a lot of people say, well, how is that different? That's a belief part of this, and when someone's religious beliefs, why don't they have the same
standing? I think it's different in a very significant way, in the sense that you're not denying them service because of one of these protected classes. You're not saying, I won't sell this to you because you're white, or I won't sell this to you because you're a Christian, or I won't do this. You're saying, I'm not going to allow my products to be used as hate speech. In this particular instance, you have protected classes of people,
right.
And he's denying it for that particular reason,
right.
The reason for which they are protected. So I think that is what makes a difference. If you just said, like he doesn't make Halloween cakes. I think we said, I don't make Halloween. It's not that he says I'll make Halloween cakes for straight people, but I won't make Halloween cakes for gay people. He has a blanket opposition to making Halloween cakes.
And there was some argument that's saying that his position should be, I don't make cakes that I find morally objectionable, including Halloween cakes, risque cakes, or things with hate messages on them.
Yeah.
But still people are going to realize. But you've chosen not to make this other cake for this reason. So that's just what I'm saying.
And again, they never got to a discussion about what the cake would look like or what messaging, if there would be any messaging. I mean, most wedding cakes don't really have a message at all.
Right.
It's just.
And I guess his argument is
frosting.
That the cake itself is the message. But I think our common ground that we've reached today is that we both recognize that this is a very complex case, and how it's decided, I don't know whether it certainly won't have the same far-reaching impact that Obergefell did, but it's going to say something about how we deal with religious beliefs in a society that's more pluralistic every day.
Yeah.
So hopefully that this is helpful to some people in having this discussion, and you can catch this again on NOLA.com. You can continue to put comments on it. We'll try to keep an eye on that, and we'll hope you will visit us back next time for the next edition of Common Ground.